Hello everyone. Just taking a quick sip of water before we get started today. How are you? Hi everyone. Oh my goodness, just hydrating before I get started today. Been doing a lot of talking. How are you all doing? My name is Stel Coombe-Heath, binge and emotional eating recovery specialist. I am just waiting for a few people to hop on. If you're hopping on, say hello. Let me know what the last thing you ate today. What is it? And the reason why I love to talk about that is because I feel as binge eaters we always feel a little bit ashamed of discussing what we ate. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. If you're watching this afterwards, hashtag replay. I'd love to just get to know who here is tuning in and where you're from. So, as I mentioned, my name is Stel Coombe-Heath, binge and emotional eating recovery specialist. And today I'm here to talk about how to stop binge eating. So, if you've ever struggled with binge eating, you might understand how powerless someone might feel around this. And we'll talk just a little bit about the science behind binge eating so that you can just get maybe just a more of an understanding of why it's there in the first place and how we can actually stop that. So, if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. Would love to make this interactive. So, make sure to hop in, say hello, ask a question if you need, because I think talking about this stuff is really how we start creating awareness and how we can actually start making a difference. So my mission is actually to help 1 million women have a better relationship with food in their body. And I am just so pumped up and fired up to be able to speak to you today about this. So I actually come from a background where I struggled with a disordered relationship with food. I struggled with binge eating disorder, body dysmorphia, orthorexia for a period of 13 years, coupled with emotional eating. So I 100% understand what it's like to be in a space where you feel powerless with food and in a space where binge eating might have become a habit or something that you just feel like you just cannot control anymore. So give me a unicorn emoji if that is you. And I just thought I would start today with just a little bit of a story about my recovery and how that started. So for 13 years I struggled with disordered eating, and it was really one of the most embarrassing things that I've ever had to go through. I was successful in my career. I had amazing friends. I had the most amazing husband, but I just couldn't get my eating right. I just couldn't understand how everything in my life could be so amazing, but I just can't seem to help myself with food. And it was really just one of the most painful things in my life. And, going through a period of binge eating, going through a binge is extremely painful. For those of you who are binge eaters might understand how it actually feels like if you've promised yourself you'll never binge again, and then all of a sudden you binge eating. Hi Jen, thank you so much for your unicorn emoji. Absolutely, yes. So painful to go through a period of binge eating. And it's fine if for those people who sometimes just binge over a weekend and then it never happens again. But for those who struggle with eating disorders and disordered eating, this is a continuous cycle, something that happens every single week, every single day of your life. You are thinking about food, you are thinking about how to make up for what you ate, you are thinking and hoping and praying that you won't binge again. And that was my life. And I remember one Thursday night, I just finished a binge. I was binge eating the whole day. On my way home from work, I bought donuts, and I actually got a whole bunch of binge food, and I pretty much binged from 3 p.m. that afternoon all the way till 9 p.m. that night. And I remember lying on the pantry floor and I was bawling my eyes out. I had, one of those ugly cries when you just absolutely lose all inhibition and you just let go. It was just so painful. I just felt so hopeless and there was just no help out there for me. And in that moment, I knew I needed to get help. And that is when I started actually looking for someone who could seriously help me, because I've seen people in the past, and because binge eating disorder was not, it was actually only diagnosed a few years ago, so about 2-3 years ago. So while I was in my depth of my struggle, I'd go see dietitians, I'd go see psychologists, because I didn't fit into the statistical diagnostic, I didn't get the support that I needed, because I was told, well, you just need to manage your stress better, or you just need to be more disciplined on this eating plan that I'm giving you. And for those of you struggling with food issues and the control with food, you understand that it's not that simple. It's not just black and white like that. So I really struggled to find someone that helped me, and through the process I actually decided to become a health coach myself. I thought that health coaching would actually help me heal my relationship with food and help me stop binge eating. And unfortunately, it made it worse. It aggravated it, because the health coaching culture is all about setting the example of being this epitome of health. It's setting the example of how much, how we can fit into our bikini and be an example for everyone else. So being in that environment actually added to my struggles with food, my food guilt, my orthorexia aggravated in that situation. And that's when I actually started binge eating at my worst, was going through health coaching school. So I thought I would just share that with you. But thank goodness, through that process, I actually met a binge eating coach that could help me. She specialized in eating disorder recovery. And through her help, I was able to recover. I infused yoga and mindfulness practices. That is what I, specialize in as well. I'm a yoga teacher, energy healer. So I took all my tools and I put together my binge-free blueprints. And today I'm here to just share a little bit just of the things that I teach my clients in the binge-free blueprints. So again, drop in the comments if you have any questions as we go along. I would love for you to support you on this live as we go along. Jennifer, if you have more questions, pop them in. I'd love to answer them. If you're watching the replay, I'm still going to be watching this afterwards. So pop your questions in and I will answer them as soon as I can, or as soon as you've posted them. So let's talk about binge eating and how it happens. So the reason why we binge eat is because of something called an urge. Now, an urge is either a thought, a feeling, or a sensation in the body that is so overwhelming. Some of my clients say they feel an itch. Some of my clients feel very restricted. I used to get like a sour taste in my mouth with like extra saliva. And it becomes so intense and so overpowering that you actually just need to eat something in order for that to go away. So the urge is what causes us to binge. And the urge is created by the hypothalamus, which is part of the lower part of our survival brain stems. So it comes from this little ancient lizard brain, and it is where it stores all our automatic functions and all our automatic processes with dealing with emotions, or dealing with trauma, or dealing with everyday to-day things. And the hypothalamus creates this urge, and what happens during the urge usually is we get these sensations, we start to eat, and a lot of my clients and myself actually feel possessed, or you feel like you actually just your brain switches off, as if you almost step out of your body and you're actually watching yourself eating, and you don't want to, but you just cannot stop yourself. So let me know if you can relate to that in the comments below. I call that food zombie brain. So let me know if you've ever felt possessed with food, and just put food zombie brain in the comments below. So the food zombie brain is just something that really takes over in the mind, and it makes us feel completely powerless. And usually we go through the motion, we aware what we're doing, but we just can't stop. And then at the end, we actually are completely broken, usually periods of guilt and shame, and thinking about how we're going to make up for what we've done, and extreme remorse, you know. So the food zombie brain is what causes the urge. But the urge is caused by three major factors. The first one is hunger. So 80% of binge eating is actually caused by hunger. And this is actually like an astounding effect. Like once I started actually nourishing my body properly and making sure that I eat regularly, most of my binge eating stopped. So hunger can come in many forms. This could be in the form of malnutrition in certain countries where food is just not readily available. You also have hunger that results from dieting and extreme restriction. So this doesn't have to be someone with eating disorder struggles. It doesn't have to be someone who is just who's bulimic or anything like that. It has a lot to do with dieting in a lot of times as well. Sometimes also people just forget to eat. So there's those people who get into a stressful mind space and they just actually cannot cannot think about eating at the time. So they build up this hunger in the body. So what happens with us, biologically speaking, when we go hungry, we actually create a hormone called ghrelin in our stomachs, and this hormone ghrelin is what tells the brain that it's time to eat. And the longer we leave that hormone to fester, the more it builds up, which means we actually start craving sweet things, high energy foods, so high fat foods, high carbohydrate foods, high sugar foods. And that's all because an excess of ghrelin causes a production of neuropeptide Y, which is one of our survival peptides, and it actually needs high energy source foods. So if you're extremely hungry, usually the things that you would crave is your your white starches, your high sugar foods, potentially nuts and seeds. That explains why a lot of people who binge eat cannot stop eating out of the peanut butter jar, and that was me. I couldn't stop. I couldn't have a peanut butter jar in my house. Like I could, God forbid, Nutella, right? So hunger is one of the biggest causes of binge eating. And secondly, we have emotions. So emotional factors that come in is basically, I call them emotional wounds. And these can be either from past histories or past experiences, things that have happened to you in the past. It can also be emotional things that you are processing right now in this moment, like stress management, or there might be like this the pandemic has been like a massive example of this, where people are just in this fear of unknown. So this is where people start using food for comforts, food as avoidance. Next week I'll actually do a decode your cravings talk, where we'll talk about what your cravings actually mean and how you can support that. But so here's what happens when we're emotional. When we were babies, we would normally cry and mum and dad don't quite know what's happening for us. We feel an emotion and it's quite scary for us, feel overwhelmed, so we cry because we don't know what to do with the emotion. Then what happens is parents, trying to nurture their baby, check for nappy, check for, whether there's wind, and probably check if the baby's hungry. So we're hungry, or we're feeling an emotion, we're not actually hungry, but all of a sudden we get this beautiful, sweet, soothing milk, and it kind of distracts us from what's happening in our lives. We grow up a little bit later, all of a sudden when we get an injection, we get a lolly. When we do well at school, we might get taken out for a milkshake, or we get taken out for an amazing dinner. When we have birthday parties, we have birthday cake. So we get used to celebrating, and we get used to using food to express our emotions. So food becomes an emotional comfort or a distraction. So often when we feel this urge and we give into it, the food is a temporary distraction from that urge, which means the body quiets down. We don't have that sensation in the body anymore, because we are tasting foods. We have neurochemicals going off, and basically endorphins happening as we tasting and enjoying these sweet things, or especially when it comes to our binge food. So emotionally, we can use food a lot when it comes to the urge. And then last but not least, a binge is caused by an urge, and the urge is caused by either hunger, emotions, or habits. Now, the habit is usually formed out of one of the two first pillars. Either you used to soothe yourself, either you used to have just extreme hunger, or you had some form of malnourishment. Or you had food as an emotional thing, or emotional support. And through the process, through the years, your brain is conditioned when you go through extreme periods of hunger, for example, going on a new diet, when you feel emotional or, emotionally, physically drained, for example, the 3 p.m. slump, then it's time to binge. So the brain actually creates these neural pathways in your mind to say it's time to binge. So this is often where, binge urges don't happen in the moment. When I work with my clients, we often find that they are triggered either a day before, the morning before, even a few days before. You can already have this trigger and the urge just building up in you until you eventually just can't take it anymore and you give in. So as long as we understand, first of all, that the binge is caused by one of these 3 things, we can start becoming aware. And the only way that we can reframe our behaviors is through awareness. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, who here loves Dr. Joe Dispenza? Give me a Dr. Joe in the comments if you appreciate his work. He talks about metacognition, and what that is the extreme awareness of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions that go with that. So when we start becoming aware of these different triggers, we can start managing that, and we can start rewiring our brains when it comes to binge eating. Now, this takes time. It takes, time to understand where we need to look at. Most of my clients feel like they don't even know where to start. And when we actually get into it and we talk through the binges, we can start unraveling how they were triggered. So the first thing we need to do when it comes to supporting ourselves with binge eating is to have this awareness of where the binge eating comes from. And through that, we can start paying attention to the urge, the thoughts it tells you. You know, it's like, you deserve this, or I'll start again tomorrow, or, you've been good all week, or fuck it. Fuck it, I've just had enough, I just don't care, is probably one of the biggest ones that I get with my clients. Usually it's an emotional response where they just absolutely just don't give a shit anymore. They'll then binge, and then we sit with the aftermath afterwards. So understanding your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors, you can start picking up whether you were actually hungry, whether there's an emotional need, or whether this is actually just a habit that has formed over time. So then what happens is, now that we are aware of what's going on, the next step we need to do is start with preventative methods, right? So the first thing we need to do is make sure that you don't go hungry. You need to nourish your body with food that works for your body, food that actually agrees with you in the sense that your body feels nourished and energized through it. You also need to start looking at your emotional wounds. And this is obviously some of the biggest work comes in this emotional space, because it's not just the emotion, right? It's the beliefs that drive, the thoughts that drive the actual emotion. And it could be, and that is driven by an activating event, whether that is a trauma, whether that is something that's just going on for you right now, whether that is a loss, whether that is just a grief from a moving away from, like, moving environment. So if you're moving house, all these kinds of things become a triggering event. And those are the things that become wounds if we don't look after them, if we don't open and heal those different emotional things. So we need to make sure that we nourish and honor what we are feeling on a day-to-day basis. And that is how we can start moving forward. And the last leg of this is, once we are able to feed our bodies properly, the urge will start quieting down. Then we can start looking at emotional wounds, help heal them, because that's what's going to help just get rid of some of the emotional reasons why we lean to food for comfort. And then we can start building habits like that last. Not until you can't really create a new habits until you've actually sorted out the first two. And that's what my binge-free blueprint is kind of based on. It's on healing your relationship with food, healing emotional wounds, and then building habits that last. So hopefully these little tips have been helpful. I would love for you to join my Facebook group called Food Freedom for Binge and Emotional Eaters. I will actually pop it here into the chats. I also have a podcast called Beyond Overeating by Wholesome Lifestyle Project. I'd love for you to tune in and come and listen to more about the science and more about just steps in helping yourself heal your relationship with food and body. And please reach out if you have any questions. Pop them in the comments. I also have a guide called Quit Binge Eating for Good, which I will also pop in the comments so that you can download that and get more information on how this process works in depth. I only have a half an hour to chat to you, so I try to make this as jam-packed as I can with as much information as I possibly can. If you now have any questions, you're welcome to ask. I might just pop in the link to my Facebook group, as well as the binge eating guide, so that you've got that. I also have, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I do weekly body positive yoga on Inside Timer. So if you'd love to join that, come and find me on Inside Timer as well. Beautiful. All right. Thank you everyone for joining me. Next week we will talk about decoding your cravings so you can understand that a little bit better. If you have any other questions that you would love me to answer about binge eating and emotional eating supports, reach out to me. I will be here in the group weekly to support you on this. So I can't wait to see you again next week. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Bye.